Over 27,000 U-boat men lost their lives during the conflict. It was the highest loss rate for any branch of the German military.
Each and every wreck is a military graveyard. There were servicemen, they died in the line of duty, and you need to respect that.
Inside this wreck is their final resting place, and the divers of Barevana will never enter it.
Imagine how the guys felt inside.
Yeah, I'm fairly confident that those guys actually don't know what hit them.
The new U-boat lies only a few hundred meters from the one found earlier. Now the team has to piece together information from various sources in order to successfully identify this wreck. Fingers are crossed that it's the elusive U-745. At the military archive in Helsinki, members of Barevana consult maps of known minefields and compare them to the last known area of operation of the U-745.
So what we have here is a map of Gulf of Finland. Here's Hanko, Porkkala Peninsula, and here's Estonia. And this map is showing all minefields that were laid to the western part of the Gulf of Finland during the Second World War. The minefield that Louhi was laying in January 12th, 1945, is here in the middle of mouth of Gulf of Finland. And this is the place where the German submarine wrecks are located. It's kind of a textbook example how ships sink where the mines are. We know that the mines were in depth of 2.5 meters. We believe that the explosion took place here, somewhere around this forward torpedo compartment, and there might have been also secondary explosions from the torpedoes. And then there's only a few seconds time to react, and the ship is diving into the clay. And it's amazing. It's like in length equal to a 25-story building. And you can imagine half of it is buried in the mud. That's just unreal.
U-boat designs constantly evolve, so small variations in construction can be used to identify them.
And these flooding holes is one thing that helps us to identify the ships, the shape and the number of flooding holes in the bow section, also in aft. True, the bow section is actually buried into the mud, and we're not able to see those, but we have to rely on all the other evidence that's available out there. And this is the area where another U-boat was supposed to meet U-745. They were searching from this area, but never found it.
This is the team's first clue that the second U-boat could be the U-745. Meanwhile, Harry, the team's lead researcher, finds a picture of the U-745 in which it appears to have a distinctive metal plate or box on the conning tower. They'll have to dive the wreck once more to see if they can ID just such a box, proving this wreck is the U-745. Jussi and Juha collect the equipment needed for the dive. It's a 2-hour drive to Hanko, where they'll meet the dive team and boat.
Let's just have fingers crossed and hope for the weather to be.
Yeah, that's a big question. It could go anywhere from here.
As the skies above turn gray, the weather turns to rain, and there is a growing concern that they won't be able to dive. Though it's not raining near the harbor in Hanko, where the other members of the team are gathered, it doesn't mean it's clear in the Gulf, where the wreck is located.
It's very different out at the sea, the middle of the Gulf than what it is here in the coast.
Joni, who has studied meteorology, analyzes high-resolution local area weather maps and looks at raw wind data that's not available to the general public.
When we start diving, it's not enough that it's good weather then. We need good weather 2 hours after the diving where we are picking divers up, and that's the most critical situation. And also we need visibility at surface because there's a vivid ship traffic.
You just have to have the ship and the boat and the crew on station, and if the weather breaks, you're ready to move out. The only thing we can do is just go out and take a look.
Time to go then.
It's the end of the diving season in Finland, and soon the temperatures will drop, making diving too risky. With their last chance to dive the wreck this season slipping away, the team decides to head out to the wreck site and hope for a break in the forecast. The original members of Badavana, who call themselves the Old School, have brought several younger new members.
Basically, it looks very difficult for diving right now. Big waves. And that's a problem in here, like in an ocean, you got big waves, and the boat goes off the wave and down the wave, but whereas here, it's very, you have very aggressive movements on the boat.
At the dive site, there is still more waiting. Conditions aren't improving. The team takes this opportunity to review the mission for the dive.
Jussi, how can you be certain that it's U-745 and not another U-boat?
This is the only boat that was patrolling in the area which had this particular square metal plate in the aft of the conning tower.
And we saw this photograph. This very photograph is of the...
It sounds easy, but at 70 meters below the surface, nothing is easy.
76 has the railing is solid from the front part until the like after the conning tower.
Yes. And it's like a can of anchovies.
So how can you see just a box? How can you identify just a box on the right?
U-745 is the only ship that operated here that had this box. There were a number of other ships, U-boats, that also had it, but they were operated elsewhere.
So do we know what that box is?
We don't know whether it is some kind of plate, sign or a box.
Yeah.
But it's clearly it's smoking gun because pictures show that U-745 had it and no other of these possible boats had it.
So is this the same wreck where the captain was found in the surface, dead in Verschollen?
Yeah,
it's the same wreck?
Exactly. From the archives, we know that the commander of U-745 was Kapitänleutnant von Trotta.
Where the Badavana team is diving is approximately 150 kilometers from where his body washed up. It's a long distance for it to have traveled.
When we looked into this issue more closely, we found out that actually many bodies of wrecked mariners from shipwrecks, even in more further east in Gulf of Finland, had ended up in the Åland Islands. So obviously, of course, it depends on at which depth the body is floating.
So if the U-boat was driving on the surface, how could they hit a mine? I thought U-boats are pretty shallow.
Oh no, they're not. They're not.
The U-boats have actually really deep draft because they are heavy and they must be heavy to be able to dive. So Type 7 U-boat has 5 meter
draw.
Yeah,
and the mines we know from the museum and from the archives, they were set at 2.5 meters depth. so it's just the right depth. So when you lose that, you get a hole in the pressure hull. The boat will just sink like a rock.
So I understood that these mines were laid by the mine layer Logi.
Yes.
Have we found a hole or any signs of an explosion on that wreck, or
No.
are they buried in the mud?
They're buried. Obviously, it's somewhere in the bow section, front of the conning tower. Since everything else we can easily see from, let's say, from conning tower towards the aft, we can see everything: the bottom, the sides, the top casing. There's no superficial damage there, so it needs to be in the bow.
That also supports the fact that this boat became nose heavy and immediately went to the bottom.
It's a glacial clay, actually. And the properties of that stuff is funny. If it receives an impact, it goes liquid for a while, and it's easy to sort. If the momentum is there, you can just keep on pushing the object into the clay, and then when the movement stops, it sort of solidifies again, and that's why it's standing there.
With the weather at the dive site now clear, the Botswana divers take advantage of this small window of opportunity to get in the water and try to get the proof they need that this is indeed the U-745.
So previously the weather didn't allow any diving operations. It was way too windy, and now the wind has calmed down significantly, so blowing all about 4 to 5 meters per second, and it seems that now we're finally able to go down there and see what we can find. The first team will be the recon team going down. 2 divers, one with camera and a dive buddy, and they're going down and checking out where the shot line is and what are the conditions, whether there are any currents and what is the visibility. And then after that, we're going down with video cameras and continue shooting according to the video plan. That's kind of very important team to go down, because the security of all other divers is to some extent dependent on these guys and their findings. They're going down first, and Joni decided to take his camera and he said, okay, if visibility allows, he'd be shooting some more details. We have this giant tombstone sticking out from otherwise flat bottom. The size of the submarine, it impresses, it feels enormous, giant piece of machinery.
The recon divers carry only enough in their tanks to survive underwater for a limited time.
Their maximum time in the bottom is about 25 minutes, roughly, and the total time from surface to surface is 75 minutes.
The recon team arrives on the surface on schedule.
Where's the shot? How are the conditions?
The rest of the team is anxious to hear their report.
According to the recon divers, the visibility is good in the bottom and allows for shooting some video. And
You don't get to dive U-boats every